everyone, it's Amira. If you've been enjoying Same Same But Different and want to see more episodes, please give me a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome back. My guest today is my good friend NOORA. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Great.
It's so nice to have you. To start with, let's have a little introduction as to who you are.
You know, I always find that one of the most difficult questions, who you are. I mean, how do you even answer that question in a sense, you know? But let's say if we're talking about roots or origin, well, I come from the UAE. I think it's always important to highlight beginnings. Like I was raised, born, lived in Fujairah, a very small emirate in the United Arab Emirates. And I think that really shaped a lot of who I am today. So I was raised there. I studied in Sharjah. I worked in Dubai. I got married in Abu Dhabi. And in between all of that, I lived abroad. I traveled a lot. And today I am living in Japan, but I'm talking to you today from the UAE. So that's in terms of roots. I'm an architect by profession. I moved in working creative projects. And today I'm actually studying and practicing coaching.
That's a pretty cool background. And what would you say makes up the Emirati culture?
What makes up the Emirati culture? I think a lot of it is compassion and understanding. I think there is we're raised with a lot of compassion. Throughout the different social the different social pieces that make up this society, there is a lot of compassion, starting from our leaders all the way down. There's a lot of diversity as well. Like I believe growing up, I told you, I grew up in a small town or a small emirate called Fujairah, and even at that times, like in the 80s and the 90s, Amira, that's where we met, you know, in a school that was multicultural. We would be in a classroom of 10 students and there'll be 10 different nationalities. Yeah. And that was something as a child maybe didn't realize until I had children of my own and we grew up. I realized what that did to my character, what that did to me as a human being, having all of those friends from the different walks of life. Today we're speaking here because we met in the 90s in a small town in Fujairah. We still connect today after all of those years. So I think the identity of the UAE is that it brought a lot of the world into the country in so many different ways. And that has made us more open to the world as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. So would you say that that is what kind of sparked this interest for you to start traveling, because you've lived in many different places?
I don't think any of those decisions actually were like very intentional. It was like the walk of life, you know?
Okay.
So some things were more intentional than others. For instance, when I lived in London, it was because of my postgraduate studies in architecture. So I spent time there, and that was obviously very intentional. But then there were other things like, you know, I lived in Germany for a while for different reasons than the time I lived in Kazakhstan, different from the reasons I lived in Egypt, different from the reasons I lived in Tokyo today. So I don't think it was extremely planned, but I'm so grateful that I managed to live in all of those different places.
Did you find it always easy to adapt to the new culture, or were there times where it was a little bit difficult?
Actually, maybe that's something I don't know. I think it's a blessing because other people always told me that they struggle when they move from place to place, but I find it actually quite easy. I usually move with so much curiosity that I let it lead the way. And with that comes a lot of love for the place, the need to know more about the people, more engagement. I think good things come with that kind of sense of curiosity. Place. So I accept it. I accept the place for what it is. I don't think I ever felt difficulty in any of those places in terms of acceptance.
Oh, but that's great. But then, what would be your advice to people who move to new countries and new cultures? What would you say to them to make their experience as easy, or let's say the transition as easy as possible?
I think you need to go with an understanding and also respect for the ways of the people there. I think we like when you move to a place, there's certain customs, traditions, ways of life that may differ from your own or what you're used to. And I think moving with the mindset that things will be different, celebrate them rather than resist them. There's so much beauty once you get closer to people. There's so much beauty. Try to get into people's places, like houses, get to know people
Okay.
personally. I don't think you know a place until you know the people and families and individuals who live in that place and who are from that place. So I think creating connections with people would be one huge great step, and would allow you to appreciate and nurture your own life and yourself within that place.
Sure, because I think often people who move abroad, they tend to look for their circles. Like an Egyptian moving abroad looks for the Egyptian circles and whatever nationality. So you would advise people more to look for the locals?
Yes and no. I mean, there's no harm in, I mean, when they look for people who are like them or more similar to them in terms of nationality,
Mm,
it's usually it's a form of finding their comfort zone or something that seems familiar to them, and there's no harm in that. But I'm just saying, keeping your options open, keeping your heart open, that you don't just keep yourself to a certain group but engage in more.
okay, yeah, that makes absolute sense. What or how important is the language in the whole process of moving?
Oh yeah, I think one of the most difficult, I think where I would say experienced the most like language barrier was when I moved to Kazakhstan. Like
Mhm.
absolutely nothing in English. Nobody spoke the language. I truly, it was very difficult to connect to anybody at that time. I had a very small child too. So that was big. But then I started taking classes and a whole world. So it was like Russian and then a whole world. Like I remember walk in the streets and feel everything was gibberish. And then suddenly, even, I mean, right now I kind of forgot most of the things maybe that I've learned because I haven't practiced. Maybe I could like that again. But suddenly I felt everything was decoded. Like I could, I could milk clip, on a bottle. I identify things while I'm doing grocery shopping for my grocery, and it felt a step closer to the place.
Sure, it opens a whole new world in that area that you are living, for sure. Do you feel that you changed at all, moving from one place to another?
Definitely, definitely. That's why I told you the first question you asked was so difficult. How can you identify yourself as a person in one sentence? You change day by day when you're in the same place. How about moving from one country to another country? And especially that I've moved in different stages of my life. There was a
That's
point
true.
where I was a student. There was a point where I was married but had no kids. There was a point where I had one child, then my second child, um, different age groups. So yes, I've changed. I've been so many things in so many different places, so many roles. And I love that. It makes that internal world of you much richer.
What is your concept of home and belonging?
When you first say home, I go back to my homeland, which is where I was raised. So I have, obviously, that's like a huge, strong bond to the UAE, definitely, and specifically to the emirate I was raised in, which was the Fujairah. Um, so the first thing when you tell me homeland, I definitely would think of that. That's like the instant, immediate response. It's where I made my first connections. It's where I was raised. It's where I learned, everything. And it was a very close society where there were a lot of human connections. And I believe it's what makes me grounded today. It's those first early years of my life. Um, but the homeland always remains in your heart, and you always refer back to it as you move from one place to another. So it never leaves you. It feels like it's a very transparent but solid connection that never gets cut off, no matter where you are. But then you develop other kind of understanding to places, and places that you feel at home as well, more at home in certain places than others as you travel and live in. For instance, Egypt is one of those places. Like I've been traveling there, and I wouldn't say only traveling, but lived there as well. And I have a great connection to that place, you know, and for very different reasons. So what is the homeland, or what is home? It varies. It's a very complex question.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And I remember we talked about this a while back about your connection to Egypt. And I found it really interesting because you are an example of somebody who kind of makes an own type of home and have a sense of belonging to a country that is not in your blood. And that shows that it doesn't have to be the culture that you were born into.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about Egypt that that you love so much?
So I've mentioned that, yes, I've traveled all over the globe. I think when we first started traveling to Egypt, I was very young. My mother, I think, loved it so much, and we kept on going. That's when the relationship got built, I would say, like small little bits and pieces that keeps on building up year after year. But I must say that what kind of struck me about it, and up till this day, first of all, the paradoxes that exist in that society, the extreme, but then even in those extremities, like you'd meet someone who may not even own a house, may not know where his next meal is coming from, and he'll still be able to make you laugh on the street. You know, it struck me in a manner that no other place struck me. How people, you know, in Egyptian or in Arabic, they say the Egyptians are المصريين أصحاب نكتة. يعني they have a good sense of humor that I haven't seen in any other nation. And to the entire Arab world, even if you haven't visited Egypt, Egypt will have an existence in your life through media, through, you know, soap operas, المسلسلات. It exists. We all know Egyptian. We all understand Egyptian, even if we've never traveled to Egypt. We all kind of know bits and pieces of that culture. It's unique to the entire Arab world. No other country speaks the Egyptian dialect. We all have similarities. Like in the Gulf, we all have similarities and variations. You know, between Syria, Palestine, Jordan, they'd have these, Lebanon, you'd have certain word similarities, but within the dialect, there it exists on its own. So I feel it was a different reality that attracted me to Egypt. That created a strong contrast between my homeland and that world, and it I was gravitated towards that, and I can't, like, until this day.
So many people say that Egypt does have some kind of magic to it. Exactly. It's a charm. The people are charming. They are so friendly. It's you go there and it's like nothing else. It's Egypt, for sure.
It is. And they keep on saying that el beit beitak, which is the house or the home is yours. And it's very true. You go there and that's what you feel. The place is yours. I don't feel like a foreigner when I'm there. And it's very important as well to kind of maybe note, we never traveled as tourists there. Like, I always felt I was, I lived as the Egyptians lived when I was there, you know? I didn't want to be a tourist. I didn't want to go where the tourists went. I didn't mix in the way the tourists mixed. I was actually, I repelled from things that looked like that or seemed like that. It was more of the Egyptian life, you know, going down to the earth, being grounded, going to the farms, going out to the agricultural land, spending time with the people there. There's an entire world within Egypt, I think, a different world than what exists in the rest of life.
No, that's true, and you bring up a good point as well in actually exploring the real everyday life part of it, and not only the kind of the touristic side. And I suppose that goes back to what you said before, that whenever you do move to a country or you visit it, I think you do get a different sense of the reality of that place by really seeing the everyday life, and not only the tourist, the things typical tourists would do. Do you practice or speak the Egyptian dialect?
I do. And I mean, I do when I'm in Egypt. I immediately switch. When I'm with my Egypt, I have a lot of Egyptian friends. So the minute I'm sitting with them, speaking to them, I just switch to Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing, like a funny story, like when I was younger and I was traveling with my parents there, and we went on a cruise that went out from, like, that left from Egypt.
Okay.
So, and all on that cruise were Egyptian, except for our family who was from UAE.
Okay.
And that way, Egyptians are very social. I am very social. So, you know, by the end of the like 2-3 first days of that trip, I already made so many friends. And whenever I told them I was from the UAE, they never believed me. They were like, "You're lying," like all of that. So, and then I'm like, "Wait a second, I'm gonna bring my mom, and then you'll believe in my mom and the way she dresses and the way she speaks. She's a traditional, you know, lady from the UAE. You wouldn't mistake for anything else." And I did, and they were in complete shock. And they just like, "Whoa, so you're not Egyptian?" I'm like, "No." "And your mom is not Egyptian?" I'm like, "No." But there's just a state of mind that changes. I just get immersed and I just speak to them in their own dialect. I feel it's my own too. Like, I don't feel it's foreign to me in any way.
But then I think that's something that not many people know, that it's true that Arabic is one language, but then that every country kind of has its own dialect, for sure. A beautiful girl like yourself from the United Arab Emirates, who's traveled the world and now located in Japan. I mean, what was your first impression, like the first days in Japan? How did it feel?
So when I moved to Japan, that wasn't my first visit. So the first time I've ever been to Japan was about 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, as well, unintentionally, we had those connections to a certain place. And in this case, it was Japan. But last year, I moved with my family, with my children, and my husband. And it's been a different experience, but I must say a very pleasant one, and very different from any other place I've been to. What stands out for me mostly is how safe it is, how extremely safe, unbelievably. It makes me feel much more assured as a mother raising two boys. And the sense of values and ethics as well. People are very polite, even though they have their own ways of doing things. They're extremely polite. They're highly ethical, and that as well is lovely to see, and to see it in different ways of lives. You know, like, I mean, how does that get expressed in their day to day? I think one thing when people ask me that I say I notice and appreciate so much is how they tend to do one thing at a time. And I decided that that would be a life philosophy for me. So if people are eating or drinking, they won't walk and eat. They won't walk and drink. They'll stop, they'll drink, they'll drop it, you know, and then walking. Yeah, and there's a sense of attentiveness and awareness to the things they do. And I think that's what I appreciate the most, and something that I'm trying to pick up and learn as day by day. Yeah, that's beautiful about that culture.
That is nice, because I feel so many times everybody in this society here, it's like rush, 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 try to do everything at the same time to make it there on time and to do everything you need to do. And yeah, to hear that you just, I don't know, do you feel that life there is more relaxed, more organized?
I'm not as rushed. I stopped doing more than one thing all at once. And the state of the city and the country helps that too. Like, everyone is participating in that, you know, it's not just you. Space, and they're minimalists as well. And I love that. It's like getting rid of the unnecessary in every aspect in life, whether it was mental, whether it was physical. Because spaces are small there, people will only truly buy what they need. You'll never leave clutter build up in your house.
How did you feel you and your family were accepted when you arrived in Japan and your first moments there?
I didn't feel like a foreigner there, even though I look very different. I dress very different. Anyone who'd see me on the street would obviously notice that I don't belong to this place in one way or the other. You know, I don't look Japanese, and I'm aware of that, and that's fine. And in previous travels, like there would be places, well, at least like people would kind of turn their head, you know, because something different just passed.
Yeah.
But I don't even get that in Japan. Like I'd walk and no one would make me feel like I'm different.
Wow.
I must say that's very comforting.
For sure.
We were very welcomed in the schools, in the communities of the boys, with their friends, within the families. I must say I had a very positive experience in the past year.
Have you been able to bring your Emirati culture with you somehow to Japan?
Remember in the beginning when you said, what would you tell people who kind of stick to their circle?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I stick to my circle, but as much as that, I would bring elements that would comfort me from home, you know, like our Arabic coffee, the Arabic pot and you know, finjan, like the dallawi, that's what we call it, the dates, some pieces that were in my house that I loved so much in the UAE. You know, I took them with me, pictures of family. So there would be bits and pieces of comfort items that would comfort me, would comfort the boys. That is a lovely reminder of what home feels and smells like, and keeps that attachment.
Well, it doesn't have to be anything like enormous or extraordinary. Like just a couple of weeks ago, what made my day was randomly finding this little Arab corner store and finding they sell genuine bukhur. I mean,
Bukhur is a big thing. We must have bukhur in the house, you know.
Yeah, it's the smells. They take you back and bring the memories back and kind of, help bring your culture to wherever you are. So now you've spent some time in Japan. Can you see similarities and obviously differences as well? But what things really strike you? Things that are very much the same to what you're used to, and things that you really needed to adapt.
I think one constant, whether it's us or similarity between our lives in Japan or any other place in the world, is being able to connect within our humanity, you know, like just respect another person's existence and space and morals and customs, and just having that space of to celebrate that, you know, and not constantly highlighting differences for the sake of highlighting differences. At the end of the day, when I go to a school and my child goes to the same school with Japanese boys or children, their parents are seeking the best for their children. So am I. You know, when we go to watch their play, we're both very happy to see our boys up there on stage. It doesn't matter if I'm from the UAE or she's from Japan. We're the same. And there's also a huge kind of expatriate community there, and every mother wants the best for her child, and we connect. And you know, when COVID happened, we all were scared and feared for the well-being of our loved ones in the same way. So there are much more connections than differences. The differences should be celebrated, not highlighted in a way that disadvantages us all as people.
Yeah, the funny thing about COVID is that it does not discriminate. COVID treats everybody the same. Why would you say it's so difficult for people to do that?
You're not born that way, definitely. It's conditioning. And again, and I think, again, going back to the fact that, you know, I was in a classroom with with students from 10 different nationalities. When someone came when I visited my friends' houses who was Egyptian or Indian or Sri Lankan or Pakistani or a British, or I literally as a child didn't go seeing what nationality um, they came from. I went to play with my friend, and that remained. And I had parents who supported that. So until this day, that's how I interact with people. I don't see that. I see the interaction between us. And I think it's conditioning. If you were raised to believe and think that, you will, it will kind of, it will continue with you. But I don't think humans are are born that way.
And it's true, in our childhood, there was no like, oh, like kind of categorizing people based on nationality or this or that. It was everybody together. We played. We
had fun. We enjoyed the same things, and it was and it was a beautiful childhood in that way. And I'm glad we had parents who supported that. And our parents didn't make us feel anything else as well. And that's something I'm grateful for as well. So, and it's the way I'd like to raise my boys too, you know.
Yeah, because that was bringing me to the next question, thinking that because you do have children now and you've been through what you've been through and you see what's going on in the world as well, what do you try to tell them and how do you explain this to them?
I let them question so much. So I'd mention, you know, this thing happened. And they'll be like, but why? That's horrible, you know? And that's their answer. It's horrible. And let's leave it at that. I don't overdo it. I think every age, whenever they come up with a question, we sit and discuss it. I try to raise them respecting everyone, everybody. And I think that goes a long way. Not labeling things or people or places. And just for them to be able to live in different countries at such a young age as well is a process that is not dictated. It's happening. It's a process. It's a progress that I think they're learning and absorbing every single day. That will only be reflected at later ages.
Did they feel like they were coming home when you returned to the Emirates?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, there is family first and familiar places. There's the grandparents' houses from both sides, and they love visiting and they love being in that space, and it feels familiar. It feels like they're creating connections. Obviously, when we're in Japan, it's just us, it's just mom and dad. But when they're here, there are more relatives, there are more connections, there's more space for them to play. And that's another facet of who they are.
Your schooling was in the late 80s, early 90s when you were a kid in the Emirates. And I think we can both see that the Emirates has changed a lot. What are some of the great memories you have of the Emirates back in the day? And what is fantastic about the Emirates now?
Well, first of all, I think the simplicity. It was much simpler then. Very grounded, you know. I think Amira, you remember, even at school, like our school was like porta cabins, literally, and you know, we went from one class to another, one porta to another around courtyards. Sometimes for PE, we'd go to the beach and play there. We're so connected to the ground and the environment. When we had geography, if you remember, we had our principal, Ms. Jan, or one of the geography teachers driving us to the wadis or, you know, to the mountains. That's a common kind of memory. And I think that's probably why I love the outdoors so much, because throughout my learning and educational experience in my younger years, we were always connected to the outdoors, you know. In every kind of other aspect in life, things were simpler. People were more connected. Society, I think, like so many people helped raising us even outside the kind of circle of our own family. When I bring a gift on Mother's Day, I bring it to 5-6 different women who I call my mothers, you know, because society was so close and close knit, and it was beautiful in that way. So that I miss a lot about the UAE. There was no screen time, the kind of screen time children are spending with today is unbelievable, and you can't help it. It's just a shift of a way of life. So that's what I truly appreciate. So that it was more grounded, it was simpler, it was closer. Even the bigger cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, still things were much simpler there. There were 2-3 different places you'd go to every weekend, and that was it. That was our outing. What's beautiful about the UAE today is how much it managed to achieve in such a short time.
Sure.
I think that so it makes me very proud, and it reflects on the people as well. We become achievers because of that. We would like to achieve so much because of that. Again, it invited so much of the world in. It grew so much, and I'll forever, I'll be also, I think, appreciative to all of that. Now, whenever you go and you say the UAE, or you mention Dubai or Abu Dhabi, you know, people can immediately identify to a nation that's so young. I think that's remarkable.
I agree. And I feel really blessed to have witnessed the Emirates back in the day, because that's a time that's not coming back. And it's like you said, simple, and just, I have such warm and happy memories of our childhood. I think it was really such a great time to grow up there, and such a cozy place as well.
It was cozy. It was very cozy in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, it was. So now you've explained a lot about where you've been and how you've been living your life. So could we maybe go back to that question of who are you? What pieces make up the identity of NOORA?
Oh, you think, Yanni, this is going to make it simple?
Is this making it easier or actually more complicated?
Yeah. Look, I cannot identify myself with a role or something of that sort, because that's forever changing. But there are characteristics, there are traits, you know. One day I'm single, another day I'm a mother, another day in the future maybe a grandma, you know. I just don't know. It keeps on changing, but that's not only who you are. Those are just little bits and pieces of who you are. But I think characteristics and certain personality traits remain throughout. They kind of grow with you. And I previously said, I think my resilience, my strength, I would say my non-judgmental nature, open to the world and to people from all walks of lives. And I love that. And I love to know people at a personal level. I'm not afraid of it. Strength. And I've always been a communicator. So I love to communicate in different ways. Whether it's, I think it goes back to even that dream as a child when I wanted to be a journalist, you know. And I love to write. I love to speak. I love being here speaking to you about this. This is just, you know, this is a happy moment for me. It's one of my, it's just conversation going with someone who I'm comfortable with. So yes, a communicator is a highlight as well for me. I don't know, and people may see me in a different way too, but that's how I kind of identify with myself. And maybe you could see me in it with a different lens or in a different way as well.
It's true. I've known you since for many years. You are, for me, you are confident, outspoken, and just you show such a great you're such a great role model to show that this is you. You're proud of who you are. You want to see the world. You accept people. No judgment. That's what life should be about. That's really amazing.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
NOORA, what makes you happy?
There are a lot of things that I feel that are unnecessary for humans to thrive. So you'd see me kind of every now and then, like shedding skin, shedding the unnecessary. I do that because I want to get to the essence of things. So a sense of balance, a sense of that everything is in tune with everything else. I'm happiest when I feel everything in my life is synchronized. You know, the inside, the outside, what I'm working on, the job I'm involved in, what's happening in my house, just having that kind of balance and makes me very happy. And for me, the simpler, the better. I hate complicated lives. I hate whether it's the way I dress, the way I present myself, what I eat at home, the way I handle things at home. I hate extravagance. I love the ground. I would sit on the ground. Like, I feel I'm so connected to the ground. I love when I am people. I love it when I'm with people of a similar nature. I love the simpler people. I love the simpler lives. Generally, the simpler life is the happier I am.
What motto do you live by?
No, we'd always say be true to yourself. I'd never live a life that's not mine. I would never live a life that's not mine. And if I felt in any aspect there was something untruthful about my life, whether it was a job that I was taking that was not presenting me, or something going on in the house, or whatever it may be, I will immediately work on it until I get it fixed. Because I can't live.
What three adjectives describe you the best?
I think you just described me already when you said, like, I would definitely say confident. I would say I'm a highly spiritual person. I thrive on the unseen, let's say, more than the materialistic. And as I said, I'm a communicator, and I have love that could fill a room.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's lovely. What advice would you give your past self?
Oh, don't be afraid. I think especially in my 20s, I would say, I didn't try a lot of things because I was fearful. I was worried about what people would think, what they would project. I didn't move or try out things as much as I needed to. But I felt as well that once I hit my 30s, I somehow broke free from that. And it was a sense of revival in a way. And I'm glad I arrived to that place and space.
Oh, I love that, for sure. Really just living your life and doing it, not thinking what people are going to say or what they might think.
Definitely. It's very limiting. It's you get fixed in your limiting beliefs.
And finally, what are you proudest of?
That I never give up. Like I'm not scared from changing my route. I've heard a lot of people saying she doesn't know what she wants or where she's heading. She keeps on changing, but that I don't think so. I think I'm brave enough to say this doesn't make sense to me. I need to find something else, and I don't feel settled until I find it. It's like, and I think I thank myself for that. I'm like, when you kind of give yourself that nudge, like, thank you for not giving up, for not staying in that place, for not remaining in this space. I think I have that kind of courage to say, no, I'm changing direction, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or happening in life at that time.
Yeah, that's huge, and that does require courage. So you should be proud of yourself for that, because that often what holds us back is ourselves. So once we just get that out of the way, stop thinking about what others are going to say, go for it. That's really the.
And Amira, I think especially after something I didn't realize is, especially after having my boys, after creating like my own kind of family and having boys and raising them, how to handle time. Time becomes so scarce.
I can imagine.
Yeah, still being able to pursue certain things that are on your mind, that are in your heart, and going on and making time for them. That's something I'm proud of. Even if I'm moving very slowly towards them, but at least I'm making that move.
Sure, for sure. NOORA, it's always such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for connecting and for asking this. I felt so comfortable. The words just kind of flowed.
Perfectly. No, it was really a pleasure. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.